All right, let's see. Where was I? Oh, yes, the mad scientist. He introduced himself as Dr. Eugenic. It's German, but he did not have a German accent. He had a deeper southern accent. And he turned and beckoned me to follow, and we walked past the greenhouse, and we walked through this long hallway, and there were lights in the hallway, unlike the other parts of the building. And I couldn't help but notice there were some rooms in this building that looked like classrooms. There were class desks, there were chalkboards, and I was thinking, wait, could they have been teaching the patients something? Or maybe they were teaching the employees something. Because I remembered those poor patients are down in the cells. And I followed him into this big wire cage. It was an elevator, but it looked like a big wire cage that would snap at any minute. And I followed him onto the elevator because he seemed to trust it. And he just pushed the elevator for the second floor. And it calmly went up. And the whole slow, creaky ride up there, he was just singing along to different jazz songs, like do 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 do. And he says, I love the moten swing. Dum da 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 dum da dum da dum. And the whole time I was thinking, dude, we're in a creepy elevator in a creepy building where people are getting murdered, and you're singing old jazz songs? But that was the least weird thing he did that day. So we walked out of the elevator and walked to the first door you get to when you leave the elevator. And he pulled out his key ring and fished for the right golden key and unlocked his office door. And he turned the light on, and I could see a white room with no windows. And he said, after you. Oh, if I just hadn't gone in, I don't know what would have happened. But I did. I went in, and he came in with me and closed the door immediately behind him. And then he made sure that the door was locked. And he put a chair in front of the door, I guess so I couldn't leave. And as soon as I looked behind me, I knew why he had put that chair there. I looked back, and on a cold metal table, I saw what looked like it could have been a man, but it was so skinny and decrepit and bloody. It had a big open wound on him and no discernible genitals. And as soon as I looked, I just instantly regretted it. And Dr. Eugenic said, Oh, don't mind him. He's a past experiment. And don't worry, you won't end up like him. Unless you're bad. And then I couldn't help, but I just started walking forward to him. I didn't know why I did it, but I did. And he said, oh, yes, we were trying the new, our new regenerative formula on him. I'm surprised he's lasted as long as he has. And as soon as I looked, his eyelids snapped open and he started screaming, and I mean screaming. screaming blood-curdling screams, but this was a cruel thing to do, but I'm glad Dr. Eugenic did this. He grabbed his clipboard and he smacked that poor young man right on the head, and he shut right up. And he took me to another corner of his office, and in another corner sat a man, this time in the mental asylum jumpsuit, so the brown jumpsuit, but he had what looked like a VR headset on him, and there was some kind of machine on the top of his head, and he had tape over his mouth, and he was strapped to this wooden chair, and it looked like he was in the electric chair. He was like swerving and just trying. It looked like he was trying to get out, and you could hear the muffled screams. And I just had to ask, what is going on here? And he said, and Dr. Eugenic simply said, "Oh, yes, him. We are studying his brain. You see, we are showing him things, awful things. We're using that helmet to show him pictures. The worst kind of pictures you can imagine. The worst kind of things you can imagine. Things that'll traumatize an individual. And we are scanning his brain to see how it responds." Oh, I'm excited to see this study. Okay. And on the other side of the room, there was what appeared to be a woman, but she looked like a skeleton. She was so skinny, or her legs were, but she had a big bulging belly, and her breast did come out a little bit despite her being so skinny, and she was wearing only a hospital gown. And I looked at her, and Dr. Eugenic could tell I was curious, because he said, "Oh, yes, her. We're seeing how our new serum affects fetal development." And let me tell you, it definitely speeds up the whole pregnancy process. And I just looked at him with disgust in my eyes. And he said, "Oh, come on now. We're only going to make you do one experiment, okay? One experiment, and I will let you go." And I just said, "All right, okay, what's the experiment?" And he said, "All right, yes, this is the experiment. First thing you need to do is sit in this wheelchair." And I screamed, No, you were not going to put me in a wheelchair. No. And he said, "Oh, all right. Well, I could just call security in here." Security! And just like that, 2 or 3 security guards came rushing in. And Dr. Eugenic said, "Okay, since you don't want to sit in yourself, that's okay. I can make you." And those 2 security guards, they grabbed me, and I tried to fight. I tried to struggle. I got one of my arms free, but one of the security guys grabbed it anyway and pushed me in that chair, and they quickly strapped me in. And to my horror, they strapped my arms and legs in. And as a joke, Dr. Eugenic said, "Please keep your arms and legs inside the ride at all times." And then Dr. Eugenic pulls out like a big syringe, and the liquid, it just looked so clear. I didn't know what it was. It could be cyanide for all I know. And he said, okay, this is what we're going to do. All you have to do is you just have to receive this serum, and we're going to see how it affects your body, and we will let you go. Do you understand? Okay, thank you. And then he didn't really ask me if he had my permission. He just stuck it right in my neck, the side of my neck. And that serum going in my body, it was just the grossest feeling. It just felt like mucus entered straight in my throat, and it just went down my throat. And I started shaking uncontrollably. And then Dr. Eugenic, he just slapped me across the face, and I stopped. And then he said, okay, now, to see how well it works. And he pulled out a rather large pair of wire cutters. And he said, if this works the way I think it's going to work, it'll just be a scratch. And he starts moving the wire cutters towards my fingers, and I knew, no way. And I start shaking and struggling. I start moving my arms back and forth. I start moving my hands back and forth in the restraints, and I don't know, but the restraints, they had blood in them, and I knew that they weren't mine because I wasn't bleeding, and the restraints, they felt looser, like they had been used before, many times before. And I did my best to get out, and then his wire cutters, they clamped down right on my ring finger, and I felt him break the skin. I howled in pain, and then I pulled my arm and I grabbed him. I grabbed Dr. Eugenic right by his collar as my ring finger was gushing blood. And then I hear a gun draw. I hear the click of a gun, and I felt the gun right next to my head. The security guard had a gun. And Dr. Eugenic, he turned his head to me and smiled a sick smile. My boy, look at your hand and your little finger. And I looked down, and I noticed that there was still blood coming out of the wound in my ring finger, but there was less of it than I thought, and less, and I could see the wound getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and then it patched up, and it left a little scar. And it was still as if he had cut me, but it was as if he had cut me weeks before, and it left a scar. And I don't know why, just then I felt angry, like blistering fury. I felt this boiling water inside me, and I ripped the hand that was cut. I ripped it right up, and I ripped right through the restraints with ease. It felt like just breaking through cheap Velcro. And I stood up, but I remembered I was still in a wheelchair, and I just grabbed the wheelchair and I pulled it away from me, and the restraints flew off, and I don't know why, I just felt so mighty. I felt so strong and mighty. And Dr. Eugenic laughed. Oh, my boy, I've made you stronger, both mentally and physically. I've made you into something special. And what do you say? And he was right about that. He was right, but he had done so many experiments. And again, the journalist came out in me, and I asked, is that what you did to that big fat guy downstairs? And he chuckled and said, why, yes, it is. Only we're trying to see what it will take to kill him. And one of the security guards said, yeah, we've been trying to put that big bastard down all day. It hasn't worked, but we've slowed him down. Because you can see all the bullet marks that are in him. And then I heard, boom, boom. I heard the dragging sound again. And then I heard a rather large man right outside the door. And then I heard him. And then I hear a boom, boom, boom. Almost as if he was knocking on the door rather aggressively. And then the 3 security guards went to cover the door. And Dr. Eugenics said, it's okay. He's not going to hurt me. Because nobody in here hurts me. Because I gave them their gifts. I gave them strength. I gave them regenerative powers. As far as I'm concerned, I'm God to them. I gave them everything. And Ethan, I just gave you everything. I looked at him and I said, how do you know my name? Oh, Ethan. I see everything in this asylum. And I see everyone. And I saw you there. And just before you came, I had one of my employees subdued and committed to this great program. And shortly after him contacting someone outside this administration, you show up. And then, right afterwards, word got out that somebody was here that wasn't supposed to be. And then I hear pandemonium coming in the cells downstairs. And then all hell broke loose. All hell broke loose because of you. But I knew this operation was going to fail eventually. And now I can just pin this on the executives. So as far as the papers are concerned, I'm the hero that gave these men and women the best gift they've ever been given. And I asked him, how do you think you're going to get away with this? And he said, easy. I'm going to flee this country just like I fled America. And I'm going to come up with a new identity. And I'm going to get far away from here. And by that time, I would have unleashed my glorious creation. You see, Ethan, I am the modern Prometheus. I have created and advanced the true master race. And no, it has nothing to do with the color of one's skin, or the religion they follow, or their sexuality, or their gender. You see, It's all about me. And I could barely look at this man. I was so disgusted. And I grabbed him by his collar again. I grabbed him by his neck. And he and he made like he was gonna call for security again, but just then the door came flying through, and then I see that big, larger than life man come through. And I heard the gunfire, but it was futile. He grabbed those security guards and he just bent them over his knee, and I heard a snap and a groan, and the first one was done. And he grabbed the second one, and the third one ran in fear, and he grabbed the second one, and he squeezed their throat and squeezed their head so much that I just heard a and the second security guard's body just went limp as a dish rag, and he let him go. And that man dropped to the ground. And now, this big man started coming towards me. I wasn't so sure I could take him because he was still at least a foot taller than me, even with this super strength serum that I had. I wasn't sure if I could match his strength, but I didn't have to. That bald man that I had seen earlier, I later found out that his name was Billy. He looked right at him, and then the big black swarm came, and it lifted this big giant right off his feet, and it slammed him to the ground, and it slammed him to the walls, and it slammed with such great force that the whole building shook. And it slammed him again and again. And there was blood coming out of this giant's mouth and his face, but the wounds were slowly closing in, but he was getting hurt so much that as soon as one wound healed, 5 more would come out. And then he was just kept getting slammed and slammed and slammed. And then I had to watch as he slammed him through the wall and then slammed him right down the elevator shaft and lifted the elevator. And just like the Tower of Terror at Disney World, the elevator dropped, and then I heard it fell right on top of him. And I never saw that giant again. I later found out that the big man was named Tim Matthews. And he was actually a veteran from America, and he had come to this asylum to get treatment for his depression and PTSD. He had no prior criminal record until this day. Man, the few hours that I was in this mental hospital was probably nothing compared to what these poor mental patients had to go through. And I believe that. But after the giant was dead, me and Billy looked at Dr. Eugenic, and he spread his arms out and says, "You see, I have given you these gifts. So I think the best way to thank me is to let me go." And then Billy, the bald man, looked at me and said, "Okay, I agree with him." And I looked right at Billy and I said, "Really? You're okay with letting this guy go? He's done all these horrible experiments. How? How are you okay with this?" And he says, "Well, he did give me powers beyond my wildest dreams." And then outside, I heard a big alarm and I heard a big boom and crash. The whole building shook and I didn't know what it was, but looking back, it was probably artillery fire. And then I saw him. That slippery old bastard was running as far away as he could through the gap that was left in the wall from the giant. And he ran, but I was going to catch him. I ran right after him. And I don't know why, but it was probably because of the serum that he had injected me with. But I was running faster and faster and faster until I just couldn't believe how fast I was going. I was going as fast as a Mustang, I felt like, and I immediately caught up to that old bastard and his white button-up shirt and his key card. I took the key card right off his chest and I just started punching him until his face was a bloody, gray, hairy pulp. And then I ran back down the stairs because I couldn't use the elevator anymore because, well, I just told you why. And then I ran back down to the greenhouse. And then at long last, I could finally use the key card. And I did. And the sweet little beep it made was just beautiful, sweet music to my ears. And I opened the door. And I looked out and I ran into those nearby woods and I didn't look back until I was at least about 15 feet away from the building. And I looked back and I saw something truly extraordinary. I saw this man who was presumably Billy, but he had a big black swarm around him and he would point right to where he wanted to go. And then the black swarm would go and it would just disintegrate these National Guard soldiers because the artillery fire had come from the National Guard and the National Guard was shooting at him. And then I saw an armored vehicle come right straight below him. And it points a big, what appeared to be a .50 caliber gun at him, and then started firing. But I don't know, it was like the swarms were able to move him out of the way just in time, and then he sent every single part of the black swarm he had towards the armored vehicle, and it tried with all its might to pick up the armored vehicle. And then I hear a pop sound, and I see blood trickling down Billy's bald, pale body. And he dropped straight through the ceiling. And then the black cloud just dropped, and it turned into just a bunch of black particles, and I felt just a weight just come off me. I felt so much just wash over me. It's like it was just done. And that was it. I walked towards the National Guardmen, and they pointed their guns at me at first, and I explained, no, I don't work for them. I'm an investigative journalist, Ethan Upshur. I was investigating what had gone on here. I guess I picked a wrong day to visit. And they said, really? Well, you're lucky, because we picked up another guy who had been in the wrong place in the wrong time. He has the last name Parker. You'll want to meet him. He's waiting by that Jeep over there. And I said, "What? That's my Jeep that I came in." And he was like, "Oh, all right, good luck then." And I started walking over towards my Jeep. And I noticed this man with slightly darker skin than mine and black hair. And he looked over at me and smiled and said, "Oh, I've got quite the story to tell you."